Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. Good morning. I hope everyone is managing in their isolation separate from each other. As terrible as this pandemic is, it's bringing out some basic truths for us. Our normal lives have been really upended, and yet we have time to reflect and perhaps see life from a different perspective. This year we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. 50 years ago, people realized that how we were treating the Earth was affecting us in a negative way. And so they decided to have Earth Day to educate the public so that we might think of alternative ways of living so that we're not damaging the Earth so much. Many of you have been practicing and have changed our habits, and so has been a good indication that this is working. Now, a similar thing happened about 2,500 years ago in India. The Buddha, as Siddhartha Gautama, realized that there were things that were happening that were unpleasant. And when he sought truth, he found the basic truth of life, and that is interdependence, which means that we all affect each other. How we act and think affects each other and also the Earth. And so it took 2,450 years or so for this understanding to reach us Americans, where now we have Earth Day, where again we're trying to educate everyone so that we see how we affect each other and the Earth. So Buddhism is educating all of us to wake up to the realities of life. This is one reason why Reverend Don Castro says that being a Buddhist is being an environmentalist. That is, that we are concerned with what our actions and conduct does to affect each other and the Earth. Now, during this COVID-19 pandemic, we're hearing a certain word, interdependence. I often think that that's a Buddhist word, and yet we hear it all the time in the news. So I think that Americans are waking up to becoming Buddhist in not only thought, but in action. So everyone is waking up to these truths. And what are some other Buddhist truths that we are thinking of? Let's look at some other Buddhist principles that are becoming popular in America. They're becoming popular because they are true. One word is mottainai. Professor Wangari Maathai of Kenya was a Vice Minister of Environment, and she won the 2004 Nobel Peace Prize. Unfortunately, she has passed away, but during her time, she visited Japan and discovered this word mottainai. Many of us are familiar with this word, as it seems to indicate, don't be wasteful. And so she coined this term and the idea of a mottainai campaign, which symbolizes the attitude of the environmental movement. Now, mottainai has this thought of not being wasteful, but it also has a word of and thought of respect, that we respect everything, so nothing should be wasted. I think many in our community have grown up with the thought that, as our parents told us, it takes 30 pairs of hands, 30 people, for rice to come to our table for dinner. And so it was very important that we ate every grain of rice because it took so much to have that grain of rice delivered to us. Now, we might compare our lives to that of Siddhartha Gautama 2,500 years ago. I think the middle-class life in America is like the life of royalty 2,500 years ago in India. In fact, I think we have it better. We can turn on a switch and get heat in the winter, turn on another switch, get air conditioning in the summer. We have cars that drive us all over. We have a choice of foods, clothing, many things that even the royalty of long-time India did not have. Now his father, Siddhodana, wanted to protect Siddhartha from the realities of the world of sickness, old age, and death. And yet, walls were insufficient to keep the truth from him. So when the Buddha was enlightened, what he did was he wanted to liberate all people. And the way of liberation is to liberate our minds. It liberates us from our narrow, shallow thinking. It shifts from the thinking of me, only thinking of the ego self, to we, that our actions really affect all others. And this we mentality has a thought of wisdom and compassion that guides us. So what are we doing 50 years from the first Earth Day? At that time and years before that, we had smog. For those of us old enough to remember, plastics was a big thing and it was used all over. Pesticides were used. There was food contamination. Our rivers were often polluted because it was an easy way to get rid of waste. So there are many things that were convenient and easy at the time, but we didn't have the intelligence to realize that it would affect us later on. And so there was a movie at the time, about 1980, named Koyaanisqatsi. I think it's a Lakota word that means life out of balance. And that's where we were. Our lives are out of balance. So where are we now, 50 years from then? In the last 50 years, we have improved many things. We have the words reduce, reuse, recycle, and especially rethink. We have alternative renewable energies, solar power, windmills, batteries. Car emissions have been reduced by electric and hybrid cars. People are recycling many things, paper, plastics, and glass and bottles and things. People are waking up. We're limited to all these things and also to other things such as chemicals in our food production, the quality of our water, and other things. Now the COVID-19 pandemic has had an effect of limiting activities throughout the world. There was a child in China who said that he was surprised when he realized that the sky was blue because in his young life he had only seen gray skies in industrial China. And so this thing we're going through is something like an invasion by a virus, and we could think of it as an alien invasion, that somehow the earth is being attacked. But what we have to realize is that this alien is actually a virus that has been with us from the beginning of time, since bacteria and viruses is just another form of life that's struggling to survive. So we're back to the basic in our isolated positions. And what is out of balance? What's out of balance are our minds, the way we think. And so Buddhist practices into effect, we can meditate. It helps us be calm. It helps us think more deeply, beyond those shallow thoughts of what's good for myself. And so we have in Buddhism the Eightfold Path, wholesome perspective, thoughts, speech, conduct, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and meditation. Now these are practices that help us in our practical lives. I'll speak in a few weeks on how it can also help us in our spiritual life, but from another direction, because these will not lead us, or are difficult to lead us to a spiritual level. And yet, as Shin Buddhists, we are receiving this spiritual insight with the words Namo Amida Butsu. Also, we have the six paramitas: charity or dana, discipline, patience, perseverance, meditation, and wisdom. Again, these practices can help us in everyday life. It improves our lives. And what it brings us to is a wise, mature way of thinking. It's not shallow. And so in these times of crisis, we look to masters, to Buddha, and other experts who talk of truth, who have a basis of evidence, of experience. And so, as we go forward, we can think of mindful living, thoughtful conduct and speech, social distancing in order to keep the virus from spreading, staying at home for the sake of others. We find that relationships are very important. And I'd like to thank Mrs. Morinaka for her contribution to the Temple of Orchids, and Ralph, Linda, and many others who helped distribute these orchids to our Keido or older members. And I think there were about 25 of these people who were over 90. We have many older people, but I think we had enough for those people over 90. And so we're thinking of others, keeping in contact by telephone, by email, and just keeping our connections in this time of social isolation. And so as we go forward, life will be different. Based on Buddhist thought, we realize that the future is not up to just chance or gods or other people. It's up to us. We can determine our future, and we've done this in the past. If you think about how we've improved our thoughts on smoking, food consumption, food health, safety, we're using car seat belts, many things. So we have improved our lives. And it's the thought that we are responsible for ourselves and for each other. And since we have done this in the past, we can do it again. And so with the threat of the COVID-19 virus, we move forward in mindful living. Also, there are other things to keep in mind. We will get past this pandemic in time, but there are other things that have a similar effect, and that's something like climate change. So again, it depends on us waking up to the realities and then shifting our minds so that we can live with this true reality. So with that, I think our future is up to us. It does take these practices to put thoughts into action. And because we have done these things in the past, I'm sure that we can, again, together move forward in a positive direction. So please join me in expressing our deepest appreciation for these truths brought to us by the Buddha and shared by all our Dharma friends. So, Gassho, Gassho, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu.